Please note, this interview with Kimmy was recorded prior to her retirement from wrestling media. We wish you all the best in the future, Kimmy. Thank you for a great conversation.
Coming up on this episode of Tom Talks Rubbish.
I remind myself that this is everything I've ever wanted. I remind myself like you wanted a life where you wake up every day and everything you do is surrounded by the wonderful sport of professional wrestling.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talks, and today I'm back with another interview. This time I'm joined by the one and only Kimmy Soko from basically so many places. I'm not even going to begin to list them, guys. But if you love Ring of Honor, love wrestling, I'm sure you know who this wonderful person is. So welcome to the show.
I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I literally have seen all my friends do this pod, and I'm like, damn, am I ever gonna get my own invite? And I finally did it. So yay.
I was like, because funny enough, we'll talk about your friends in media in a bit, but like the amount of people that said to me, "You had Kim on yet?" I was like, "No," because just I don't know why, but it was just one of those things where I was like, if she wants to come on, she's more than welcome. Do you know what I mean?
And we made it happen.
Definitely. As we begin this, where do you first discover wrestling, my friend, as an overall fan?
So it was back in 2010, so long ago. So my dad was a fan, like when he was a kid, like his whole life. And we had gotten like a flyer in the mail for the TNA baseball tours when TNA used to do that 15 million years ago. And it was coming to Brooklyn. And my dad was like, "Oh, do you want to go to this?" And I had never seen wrestling before, ever. And I was like,
Mm.
"Oh, sure, like that sounds pretty fun." And that here we are almost 14 years later, and that I've never looked back. I knew that I was meant to be in that business somehow, and yeah, here we are.
There's some people that don't know. What are the baseball tours? Are they like? Are they basically another name for a house show?
Yeah, so basically it was a house show at a baseball stadium. So like the one I went to was at MCU Park in Brooklyn. They had done a couple of them. Ring of Honor had also done like an MCU show, a show at MCU Park, because I remember going to that like
Mm.
before Tony Khan killed Ring of Honor.
We'll get to that.
R.I.P. He's killing me. He's killing me.
We'll get to that. So you talked about discovering wrestling. So when you say, "Yeah, that sounds fun" to your dad, are you someone that starts watching wrestling to get acclimatized to it, or did you just deep end when you went to the show and then fall in
Deep
love?
end when I went to the show, I wanted to like I was like, no, like let's. I feel like when you do it like when you watch it in person, it's very different than watching it on TV. And at
Yeah.
the time, I was only 8 years old, so I was like, I'll wait to see it in person before anything. And I was like, oh my God, this is a little different. Like obviously, I'm small in person, but like everyone was so much bigger. Like
Mm.
Abyss was one of the main guys down in TNA at that point, and he had that scare. That's when him and RVD were feuding, where Janice was involved, where Abyss basically killed RVD. So Jeff Hardy was another big name there. So yeah, it was just I'm gonna see it for the first time in person, and literally never look back.
What is a moment from that show, if you can remember any, that you're like, "Yeah, I believe this is the moment that got me hooked."
I just think the whole show, like, I don't think I've ever smiled so much from like the moment the bell rang to start the opening match to like the moment the bell rang to end the main event. Like, it was just so surreal, and it was just like so different for me because, I'm from New York. Sports is like a big thing over here, but it's
Mm.
different like going to like wrestling. And I just never pictured myself doing anything else. I was like, this is like, I don't know what I'm meant to do here. I don't know how I'm meant to do it, but I'm meant to be here somehow, some way. And now I've practically done everything there is to do besides lace a pair of boots and step
Mm.
in and wrestle, which
I
is
was,
crazy.
I was gonna say that in your Twitter bio it says, "I do everything in wrestling but wrestle." So
I
was wrestling ever
do.
something you considered?
No, I was an athlete my entire childhood from age 4 to 17. I did dance, I did gymnastics, I did soccer, I did track. I was very injury prone throughout the entire time. I have a history of concussions. I have very bad knees. So because of that, I never really
Mm.
considered it. And plus two, like I never like saw myself doing that. I always saw myself doing something other than wrestling, and I'm kind of happy I stuck to that. I'm kind of happy I do everything else but that because I could never do that ever.
Before we get into how your career in this crazy industry started, you said you do everything but wrestle. What's your favorite thing you do in this industry?
Gotta be the convention stuff. I mean, like my convention work is very different than what all of my friends do, right? Because all they do, they do podcasts, they interview, and like I love doing that. I love doing media stuff. That's what my degree's in. But I have a different perspective than everybody else because of that. Like I see these wrestlers outside of their characters. I see how they are on the day-to-day basis.
Mm.
I see how they interact. I see how they are from a business point of view. And I think that's so interesting and it is so different, which is why I love like talking to people about my convention work. And I'm like, "Oh my God, yeah." I'm like even this weekend, I'm repping the pink power. I'm repping Amy Jo Johnson at a Comic Con, which is insane because I wasn't even alive when she was on Pink Power Rangers. And it's just so interesting to like talk to people about that. So I would definitely say my convention work is my favorite thing I do because it's just different than everybody else.
How did you start the convention side?
So I started going to conventions when I was 10 or 11. I think it was 2011, my first con. And so I just started going to cons a lot more often. There would be like four a year in my tri-state area. So it would be Legend of the Ring and big event. And so the more I would go to cons and appearances, I started to get close with vendors. And I was going to my senior year of high school. So it was June of 2018. And one of the vendors I was close to at the time, his name is Richie. And he said to me, he goes, "Oh, so WrestleCon is coming to New York next year because that was when WrestleMania 35 was coming to 2019.
Mhm.
Would you be interested in working with me at WrestleCon?" And I was like, "I don't have to pay to get in? Hell yeah, let's go." But obviously, to work what, in my opinion, is the biggest show that we do all year long, you have to kind of build up how to work a convention because my
Yeah.
job is not easy. So I started to work indie shows and smaller conventions that led up to WrestleCon in 2019. And I worked with Richie and RDB Promotions till 2021. During the pandemic, we did a lot of virtual signings. So that would be like on Zoom, broadcasting on Facebook Live. And that's how everybody got to know me. All the vendors, all the talent. So then going into 2022, it was one of those things where I was getting offers left and right to work shows with headline talent. And, I needed to see what that door led me down. So I called myself the forbidden door of the vendor world because I worked with everybody and anybody. And then going into WrestleCon in LA, I had the opportunity to work with Britt Baker's agent. And Britt vouched for me. I've known Britt for 5 years now. If you even look at my social media, Britt and I are
Oh
close
yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
And she vouched for me and she goes, like Kimmy's a great worker. Like I think you should use her. And it's been a year and a half and I haven't looked back. I love working with primetime appearances, love working with, that's the Trish Strasses, the Litas, the McFoleys, the Brits, the Orange Cassidys, the MJFs who I get to rep 2 times this year, which I'm kind of nervous about, but kind of excited. And it's been a wonderful ride. I've gone from being a fan at these things to a vendor to a handler to an agent representative and I love it. I love every part of it.
That's so cool, and you can see the enthusiasm as you're talking about it. Something you talked about there was going from a fan to working in the industry. So how did that change, first of all, your fandom of wrestling overall? And then how did that also change how you might interact with a wrestler, if that makes sense?
I always say that when you're doing a convention, you have to shut off like that you're a fan. Like I'm not that person that's talking to these wrestlers about like what they're doing on TV because they don't want to hear about that. They don't want like, they're already interacting with fans for 3, 4 hours. They don't want like another fan working their table. So that's like kind of my rule is I don't mention wrestling unless they mention wrestling to me. And someone like Britt will ask me like, my opinion of what she's doing on TV. A couple of talent asked me that as well, but I'm not that person that does that. I think it's also changed my fandom because being in the business, I kind of know things that are going to happen now, which is so weird. And I'm like, wow, I knew that was gonna happen. But I don't think it ruins it for me either because it's also like, okay, they told me this 3 months ago. Things change. Card subject to change. That's the biggest thing
Yeah.
in wrestling. So it's also the anticipation of like, okay, maybe it won't happen. It's seeing if it's true or not. I also am tended to be a bigger fan of people I've worked with, and I love seeing them succeed and like realizing their dreams, which is like Daniel Garcia. I worked his first convention ever, like 3 months after he signed with AEW. And the fact
Mhm.
that there's a chance he's going to go to WWE is insane to me. And I've just become a bigger fan of Daniel because he was someone I worked with. He's someone that we got along. We're both, around the same age, just trying to strive for our dreams. So I think like that's the one thing that's really changed my perspective is I've become bigger fans of these people, but also, in the contrary, there's wrestlers I don't like working with. There's wrestlers that I've had very negative experiences with that I'm like, I hate you.
Mhm.
Sorry. I kind of don't want you to succeed, but that's for a conversation off air.
I was going to ask, but now I won't. Now that you said there's a conversation off air, I was
Well,
going
I
to
mean, I'm
say,
not going to name the talent. Like, that's not something I'm going to do. But, it goes with the fact of I see what these wrestlers are like from the day-to-day basis. Some of them are awesome.
mm,
I always say the biggest heels are the nicest people
I've
ever.
noticed that as well.
But there's also people that aren't nice that kind of get to their head, and you just kind of gotta nod your head and accept like this is your job for the day, and there's nothing you could really do about it. But you don't have to see these people tomorrow, so doesn't matter.
Mm. What you talked about there, sometimes wrestlers might tell you scoops and stuff or what might be happening on TV. Past tense, what has been the biggest thing that you were told by someone and then you go, I was told this has happened. That's really cool. And you see it come to fruition.
Ooh, there's been so many, which is scary. I don't want to say Sting going to London. I feel like I've been told bigger things than Sting appearing at All In. Um, Oh God, I don't know. I think, well, this was actually before I was even like in the agent game. So when the Ring of Honor Women's Division first started, like I was kind of working with Maria Kanellis, like kind of hands-on with a
Mm,
lot of the things that was happening. I was someone who was like reporting weekly what was going on with that tournament stuff. And I remember Maria had X me. She goes, "Who do you think should win the whole thing?" And I go, "Roxy." She's like, why? And I gave her like this whole explanation as to why I thought she should win. She won the whole thing. Now, I'm not going to say that she
no.
picked my winner because I said it, but until Maria tells me otherwise, I'm going to continue to tell the story that I was the one who picked the whole winner of the tournament. So I would say that is like, that was really cool to see, like, come to fruition and just like everything happening up to that. But I like the scoop world. I like being a secret insider, Kimmy.
What about if we flip the question? What is something that somebody has told you might happen that then didn't end up happening maybe that week on TV or in the pay-per-view that you were, for lack of a better phrase, disappointed didn't
Mustafa
happen?
Ali going to AEW.
Okay. Why?
I was heavily told that. Like I was told on three separate occasions like this was going to happen and it still hasn't happened. And I'm like, that's weird. Like why? Like I feel like he like, I love the work he did in TNA. I love the work he's doing on the indies. But I feel like he deserves a bigger platform. And I feel like
Mm,
AEW is like the perfect fit for him. Even if they don't have a spot in AEW, Ring of Honor, we're heavily available for talent that are going to show up every week. So I was kind of disappointed Ali didn't show up yet. I mean, obviously, still could happen, but as of right now, it's like, what are we doing here, Tony?
mm. You brought up Tony Khan and Ring of Honor there. Before we get into covering Ring of Honor for our local establishment and places like that, how did you discover Ring of Honor as a fan?
My dad brought me to Super Card of Honor. No, not Super Card of Honor. What was I forgot the first Ring of Honor show I went to. It wasn't Final Battle. It was like a September pay-per-view. Can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. In 2011, I remember the main event was the Briscoes in a ladder war. And I was
Mm.
sitting on the floor. There's no way a child should be sitting on the floor at a Hammerstein Ballroom Ring of Honor show.
No.
So we stopped sitting on the floor after that. We would get like the balcony seats because we would kind of be like secluded from everybody. But that was the start. And then Ring of Honor just always like kept popping up in my life. And I'm like, wow, no one's really covering this. I should be the one to cover Ring of Honor. And it's funny because even at the All Out Scrum, Mark Sterling had mentioned Ring of Honor, and everyone looked at me and gave me a round of applause because Ring of Honor was mentioned on the All Out Media Scrum. And I go, am I the face of Ring of Honor Media? What happened?
That's really cool. So the big question, Kim, thoughts on Tony Khan and Ring of Honor?
He's killing me. He's absolutely killing me. Okay, first off, our champs never show up. Our world heavyweight champions appear more on Dynamite than he is on my programming. Why is our mid-card champion in Mexico? What is happening here? I don't understand. Like, it's dark. I sit through 2 hours of squash matches every week. And I don't understand why. We have 3 amazing pay-per-views we put on every year, and Tony just can't book the week to week. I'm available. Book me, Tony. I will run it for you. I will literally, I had even said, Dijak, have him be our Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Champion. Have him beat Mark Briscoe at Final Battle and take us into 2025. You could see what he could do.
I saw that. So you talked about there as well. How did then that come then, Kim, that you was going to start covering Ring of Honor and start covering wrestling within the media space? What comes first? Is it the conventions or is it the covering it?
Cons came first. So my major is in sports media. I'm actually the only female in my graduating class at college that has that sports media degree, which I wear very proudly. I think I even put that on my resume as like a bragging point of like only female that has this degree in 2023. Um, so I've always been interested in media. Like my original goal in wrestling was commentary. Like that is something I wanted to do. It's something I was able to do for a short while, which was absolutely amazing. And I accomplished my childhood dream. So the Bob Culture podcast, which is how kind of my media career started. So I had a pod for a while, but I wasn't really getting a lot of views. And Rob Williams from Bob Culture Podcast and BCP Plus, he was watching one of our virtual signings. I forgot with who. It might have been with Maria actually, but I can't remember. And he reached out to me and he goes, "Would you ever like want to do our podcast?" And I was like, "Sure." Like that sounds really fun. It was the first podcast I was like ever on with other people.
Yeah.
So we did that pod. It was in January of 2021. And one of the other members of the podcast was Bill Bodkin, who is the editor-in-chief for the Pop Break. And it was like, I was in my sophomore year of college, the pandemic was still going on, all that stuff. And it was like going into that summer that Bill had said to me, he goes, would you ever think of like writing for me and like covering wrestling? Like, did you ever think of doing that? And I'm like, no, but that sounds like a pretty good idea. Like using my degree, right?
Yeah.
So I still write for Bill, even though it seems like I do everything else but do that. I still do write for Bill. So I started doing pay-per-view stuff for him. I started doing all my Ring of Honor stuff for like the Women's Championship with Roxy, like that stuff's on there. And so when the Ring of Honor Weekly was going to come out, I said, "Bill, like, can I do this for you?" He goes, "Yeah." And so we're going. And then I met Mike Johnson at a convention. And he knew who I was. Mike Johnson knew who I was. And I was like, whoa, I don't know how you know me, but that's crazy. And he said to me, he goes, did you ever think of like writing for me? Like, I would be welcomed if you would want to do it. And I go, oh my God, like that's PW Insider. Like that's like one of the biggest wrestling sites out there. And I was like, of course. And I go, do you have someone like covering Ring of Honor? Like I feel like my Ring of Honor reviews just need like a fresh new set of eyes. He's like, oh my God, do it. I was like, all right. So I've been doing that for almost a year now for him, is covering Ring of Honor weekly. It's been absolutely amazing. Love Mike. I think I'm actually going to see him at New York City Comic Con in a couple weeks, which would be like the 1 year of us meeting in person. But yeah, so that's how PW Insider started. Then with OLE, they needed a guest host one day for their Ring of Honor pod, and they were like, "Hey, Kimmy, I see that you watch Ring of Honor. Would you want to?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I started doing like a once a month, and then I just never left, and I invited myself to stay on that show.
Yeah.
And here we are. It's so weird because I take it like me and Kate are like two of like the driving factors of Ring of Honor media.
Oh yeah,
And we're the two
definitely.
that vouch for it the most out of anybody. And I I'm honored that it's two females being like the grounding point of like you need to watch Ring of Honor every week and this is why you need to watch Ring of Honor. This is why you need to watch the pay-per-views. And it's like just so crazy that like I could consider myself one half of the face of Ring of Honor media, even if I'm like the only person watching it.
What do you think? And this might date this podcast slightly because I said to you it will go up in 2025. But what do you think Tony Khan needs to do? You mentioned a little bit, but what do you think Tony Khan needs to do more of to get more eyeballs on Ring of Honor? Ring of Honor back to how it used to be, essentially.
Storylines, I think, are a big proponent. There's no storylines whatsoever, and if there are, it's like two. And it's not with our champs. Our World Heavyweight Champion is a part of a major faction on AEW.
Mm.
So that's a big thing, like storylines, like obviously everyone's so like, today Athena is officially the longest reigning Ring of Honor champion of all time, beat Samoa Joe's record. Huge deal. Athena's like the only one that has a constant storyline within the company. They're hinting at, Athena Billy 2 for Final Battle, but you need more of that. Remember, Ring of Honor's not on TV as of this moment. You have to pay $9.99 a month to watch Ring of
Yeah.
Honor on Honor Club. You have to entice people to spend the $9.99 a month. Storylines. They don't want to sit through 2 hours of squashes. I don't want to sit through 2 hours of squashes, but I have to because I cover it. You have to give us a reason why. Put your Ring of Honor World Champion on the program. Put your TV champion on the program. It's not that complicated. Why is there a Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship match next week on Collision? Why is that not on Ring of Honor?
Oh yeah. I never thought of that, to be honest. You
Trying to kill me.
Yeah. You brought up there that some weeks you just have to watch Ring of Honor as part of your job, in your own words. So what do you do on those weeks that you're like, I'm burned out. I don't want to watch. I don't want to podcast. How do you motivate yourself? How do you overcome burnout and things like that?
I remind myself that this is everything I've ever wanted. I remind myself like you wanted a life where you wake up every day and everything you do is surrounded by the wonderful sport of professional wrestling. It's okay. You're gonna live through 2 hours. And, we have a group chat. It's called Ring of Honor Therapy. We rant in there throughout
Mm.
the entire 2 hours. And yeah, I'm very grateful to have a very wonderful support group. I do have anxiety, which flares up from time to time. And I'm lucky, like my two best friends who are
Preach.
very yes. I'm very lucky that my two best friends are outside of this business that literally have nothing to do with it, that I can just vent to them whenever I have a problem. And they think my job is the coolest thing ever because they're just like, so our best friend gets paid to like hang out with celebrities? Yes. Yes, I do. It's wonderful. Would never want anything else. But yeah, I mean, obviously, especially like in our busy months on the con scene, which is March and November, like that's months I'm traveling back to back to back to back. Like even in August, I like this is the first weekend coming up I'm not traveling. And that's
Yeah.
so weird to me. And I'm like, wow, I really traveled all over the place. That's why I don't have a voice right now, is because I traveled for the past month. But I think the best way to conquer burnout is just like take a step back. I've seen my two best friends like every day this week because of that, because I'm home. They want to
Mm.
see me. Just take a step back, realize that life's good. Chill.
How important is it for you? You mentioned your two best friends there. How important is it to you for your wrestling fandom and burnout and stuff to have people outside of the bubble that you can talk to and things like that?
Oh, it is like the most important thing to me. I think I was told by one of my best friends about 2 years ago. She said to me, I forgot, I was in college. I forgot what I was doing. I think we were going out for a night. And she said to me, she's like, it's okay to act 21, right? You always don't have to act like the adult who has your whole life put together and doing everything you've always dreamed. Like, it's okay to act 21 and go to like a bar, and drink and like do all that. And I was like, yeah, but this life is so much more fun. I don't have to act like my life isn't put together. I don't have to like the normal stresses of an early 20-year-old in 2024 with the student loans and a job and moving out. Like I don't have to think of all that when I'm in this world. When I'm with all of you, that's all we talk about. We all talk about how our lives are living hell. So it's important to kind of like differentiate because of the fact of like I am in my early 20s. This is supposed to be like the best times of your life where you
Yeah.
don't have any responsibilities, where you can go out and practically do whatever you want, which is why I take every traveling job I want because I want to travel the world while I still can, while I don't have any responsibilities in my life at the moment. So to me, without them, I really wouldn't be here. Like my two best friends have been with me literally like one of them is my neighbor who's been with me since I was 8 years old. The other one has been with me since sixth grade. And they've seen every part of this. Like they've like the lowest of lows, the highest of highs. They've made every accomplishment seem like the biggest deal ever. Like I remember my college interviewed me for like their school newspaper and they were like making it like, oh my God, the Rider University news today, tomorrow she's gonna be on like Good Morning America and like
Oh
all
wow.
of this really cool stuff. And I was like, okay, we're not there yet, but glad you guys think we're gonna get there. So without them, I wouldn't be here, and I owe so much to them, which is why like when I do have the time and I'm home, like I make sure to like take, put my phone away, like do stuff with them because this is the time where we can all just chill, relax, and experience life.
You talked about their experience in life there. What is the biggest thing that you think you experienced within outside of wrestling that
Oh, outside of wrestling.
maybe wouldn't have happened without your wrestling career? That is very wordy, and I do apologize.
I would say travel. Like, I don't think I would be able to have. So I've been to, well, this weekend will be state number 19 out of 50. I don't think I would have been able to
Oh,
travel without wrestling at all. Like, my senior year going to California and like working WrestleCon LA, like going to Vegas next year for the third time, the second time that I'm legal and I can actually do things in Vegas which is absolutely amazing. But I would definitely say travel. Like I would not like if I didn't do wrestling, I don't think I'd be traveling every week. I don't even know what I would be doing, to be honest, because I can't picture myself sitting in a 9 to 5 every single day.
no,
I don't know how people do that. Like, one of my best friends is like trying to be a teacher, and I'm like, you have so much fun with that. I'm gonna do my thing. You're gonna do your thing. I am not going down that route with you. But yeah, travel, 100% traveling.
you brought up also at the start of this conversation your friends within wrestling media. So who are those that you turn to when life gets hard on the road, maybe, and you see them at a convention or a media scrum and things like that?
Ella J. Oh my God, Ella J.
I
Ella
thought
is,
so. She's a
e-
gem.
oh my God, Ella is literally, Ella does not get enough credit for so many things because Ella is the reason that I'm someone in wrestling media because Ella literally, just like Rob, saw me on a virtual signing, did a podcast with me, and we've been best friends for 3 years. And she's literally seen me go from nothing to something. She was someone who always taught me, and I know she taught Astrid the same thing. Always shoot
I
your
feel like
shot.
you've seen that interview, and I'm kind of cringing now.
Um, always shoot your shot because you never know. You never know what is going to happen. And that's something that Ella has stitched in me. And it's the reason that I always shoot my shot on the con scene. In Chicago, there was another agent there, and I remember we saw each other at Hog, and he goes, "Text me tomorrow. Like, we'll see if we can meet up or something." I'm like, "Okay, cool." I text him next day. He goes, "You want to shadow me?" And I was like, "Me? Shadow you?" He goes, "Yeah. Like, I'll
Hmm.
show you like the real hard work of being an agent." And I go, yeah, of course. Like, I'm taking
Yeah,
Uber right now to
like
get
I'll
to
do
you."
that. Thank you.
Like, yes, 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 yes. Shooting your shot. Um, Shooting my shot of doing AEW media, doing media scrums, reaching out to WWE to go on the NXT media calls. That was all because of Ella. And I feel like Ella does not get enough credit for that. Ella is the reason we went to Topgolf, and
I
that's
saw
why.
this, and I was so jealous because I was supposed to be out there that weekend. I was supposed to be out there. I was so gutted it didn't happen.
All because of Ella J. Ella is literally the reason for so many things I've been able to do, and this is going to be. I told this to her yesterday. Like we literally had the same conversation. That like, it is because of you that like I do half the stuff I do. And she goes, no, and I go, yeah, and I start listing everything. She goes, oh my God. So definitely Ella J. I'll break kayfabe to talk about Sean because when I first met Sean a year ago. I remember I was so nervous going up to him because it wasn't like I was like this big name yet. I was just like the kid who works conventions. I was freaking out. And Sean's like, I told Sean this a couple months ago. He goes, why were you freaking out to meet me? And I go, because who am I to you? I'm this kid that works conventions. Like, you know everybody. He goes, but you're you. And I'm like, but I wasn't me yet. Like you saw me grow over the past year to be the person you talk to almost every day. Sean's I don't get why Sean gets so much hate because he is literally one of the best friends to have. He is always there when you need advice. He jokes around with you like crazy. Like I'll even break kayfabe a little more because when we were at Top Golf, even though he was yelling at me, accused me of cheating, all that stuff, behind my back, he was literally putting me over to everybody that was there and literally was like telling people like in the next 5 years Kimmy's gonna be the next biggest thing in wrestling and we're all gonna be asking her for so much stuff.
I would
And I
agree with
was
that.
and I was so upset. I go, I can't even thank him because he didn't say it to my face. What? Oh my God. So Sean is definitely another one. I know that like if I ever need anything at all, like if I just need a vent, it's just like, hey Sean, can you like talk right now? Like, what are you doing? So Sean's another one. My editor, Bill, also does not get enough credit because literally in March, when I got denied from WrestleMania 40 media credentials and I was crying in my bed for 3 days and I was like saying that media is not it, not going to go down this path, like he was like, no, that's not what we're gonna do. He's literally picked me up from the bottles of the bottom of my depression and has literally seen me thrive over the past couple months. So again, those are like the top three, I would say. Ella, Sean, and Phil.
That's really cool. You brought up something quite interesting there, which is opportunities denied on occasion, WrestleMania 40 and stuff like that. And you, in your own words, crying in your bed for 3 days when it was denied. So did you how did you deal with that opportunity? And then how did you deal with that opportunity at the time? And did you put anything in place after that happened to feel better about it if it happened again? I was trying to word that and I know what I'm trying to say. I do apologize.
So I was heartbroken because I had applied the year before and I was like, okay, chances are slim. But for WrestleMania 40, I was so confident. I had done work with WWE in the past. They knew who I was. I was like, this is it. Like, I'm gonna get it. They're coming to the Northeast. They know I'm from the Northeast. Like, there is no conceivable way that I am not getting it. And then I didn't get it. And I was heartbroken. I was so upset. I was like, oh my God. But then I'm like, well, you're still covering Ring of Honor. You're still doing Supercard. So, okay, you're doing your media, but it's WrestleCon season. That's your show.
Mm.
You're doing work with High Spots. The people who run the event, the same convention that you went to in 2013, the first ever WrestleCon that you were a fan, you're doing stuff with High Spots this time. The people who run the whole thing.
Mm.
WrestleCon Media came about because of me and Sean. I did that. At 22, I could sit here and look in this camera and say that I was the reason that our biggest convention had media for the first time. And I was someone who went on podcasts for weeks, hyping up this event, writing articles, doing all the press for a show I went to almost 10 years prior as a fan. That's crazy. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, WrestleMania didn't work out. But to be part of the reason that all my friends got to go to WrestleCon and cover WrestleCon, that's the cherry on top of everything. And that was another weekend that Sean literally telling everybody, I'm freaking kayfabe so bad. He's gonna be so mad at me.
He won't
Um,
see this. You're cool.
I mean, I could clip it and send it to him. I'll make
Yeah.
him feel a little better about himself. But another weekend where Sean was literally telling everybody, Kimmy got me in. It wasn't Fightful got me in. Kimmy did it. And if you don't know Kimmy, I'm going to tell you exactly why you need to know Kimmy. And I was getting so many messages from so many people. Sean's talking about you. Sean's putting you over. And it's like, you mean the dude from Fightful? Like when I think of wrestling media, the one guy I think about is
Mhm.
little old me. It's crazy. Absolutely insane. And to me, that beat me not getting in because I got to do the thing that, in my opinion, I was meant to do.
Mm.
Con work. And we all shined. We all thrived. It was a great weekend. I love Philly.
That's really, really cool. You talk about there, we all shine and things like that. What would be your advice to anyone that wants to go to WrestleCon, things like that, wants to get in media and things like that? What would be your advice for someone that's up and coming in this space?
Don't change. Like I never changed for anybody. I had the same mindset from when I was 8 to 23. I never changed for anybody. I never sold myself short. I never folded. I talked about before how like my whole childhood I was an athlete. And I remember my high school track coach, who I still talk to this very day, and I love talking to him and just telling him all the cool stuff I get to do. I remember when I was telling him about my anxiety, like we had this whole conversation. We had a 30-minute conversation about this. And I remember he looked at me and he goes, "You know what I'll never understand about you?" I said, "What?" And he goes, "How you're so scared to be great." And I looked at him and I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You hold yourself back all of the time. I see it. I see it at practice, see it at meets. You hold yourself back, and I don't get it. And maybe it's because of this, maybe it's because of something else, but you have to understand, you have to believe that you are going to be great. You have every capability to be the best kid on this team, and I have no idea why you don't see that." And that's something I've always kind of taken with me because I never wanted anyone in wrestling to say the same thing about me. I
Mm.
wanted people to look at me and be like, Kimmy's the best. This is why. Kimmy's great at this. This is why. I didn't want people to say the same thing that my coach did. And I could sit here and be like, yeah, I'm not holding myself back. I dive into every opportunity I've ever been given. I've canceled plans. I've literally missed so much because I was so committed to this. And I've never had anyone tell me the same thing. I've learned to be great. I've learned to believe that this is the future for me. So if I had to give advice, don't be scared to be great. Always shoot your shot, like the great Ella J said,
Oh, definitely.
and don't change. Stick to what you want, and you're gonna get there. Because trust me, there is no way that any of the stuff that's happened to me the past 14, 13 years should have happened for me. And here we are.
I have, as a great interviewer, podcaster yourself, I have a self-indulgent question before we look at wrapping this up. Where can I improve? What did you enjoy about this conversation? Everything in between.
Oh, this was great. I had a lot of fun. I have like no notes for you. This was fun. I liked it.
I really appreciate that. But as we look at wrapping this up, Kim, uh, we, before we wrap this up, I have two questions actually. Um, if you did step away for whatever reason, I know you said this is your life and things like that. If you did step away, would you view your career as a success? And what would you want your legacy in this space to be?
I would, yes, I would view it as a success because I've been able to do everything I've ever wanted, anything I set my mind to. I've kind of went to the top of everything in wrestling that I've wanted. Um, I feel like my legacy, besides beating Sean at Top Golf, which is a big part of my legacy for whatever reason whatsoever, that everybody knows me because this stupid Top Golf game. Um, Someone that always put their heart into everything. I want people to really just view me as someone that always put 100% into everything they did, never gave crap to anybody, was never the person to talk behind everyone's back, never shortcuts, not that wasn't me. Someone who was worked tirelessly day after day after day to get to where they are today.
That's really, really cool. And I fully believe that as well. What do you think your legacy in this space is though?
I don't know. I feel like it's just conventions. Like literally that's what people know me for. Like working conventions and yelling at people. I feel like there's such a deeper meaning to that that I can't think of at the moment. But I feel like, yeah, I feel like that's what my legacy is. I don't know. What do you think my legacy is?
that you help people, that you really open doors for people. I'm gonna be honest with you on that one. Like you said, Sean said that he wouldn't have got into WrestleCon without you. I know people that when I said I was doing this, said this will be a cool interview because she's opened doors for a lot of people, which I think is really cool at being such a young age. I'm not.
At 23, that's crazy. Like that's all the agents tell me that is like, do you remember that you're only 23 and you're doing all this? And I go, nope, not at all.
That's a beautiful way to end this, Kim, if I'm honest. But as we do, we are going to do a segment that is a staple on this channel called Generic Wrestling Questions. Those of you that have seen my interviews before, so I'll ask Kim her favourite match, favourite pay-per-view card, such as Double or Nothing 2019, for example, favourite wrestler's entrance theme, favourite tag team, and favourite wrestler. Basically, the questions I assume you're asked on social media or at conventions. So now you'll have a place to clip and be like, look, guys, I've watched this. Please go watch this. So what's your favorite match of all time?
My favorite match of all time. Probably because I was there live, Sasha Banks versus Bailey at NXT Brooklyn 1.
Why does that one speak to you as a fan? Is it just because you were there live?
Because I was there, and that was really the whole turnaround for why women's wrestling is where it is today. You know, I was very fortunate enough to even go to Evolution, which was the first all women's pay-per-view. And I mean, look at all the kick-ass women's wrestling matches we have. Like PWI has like a women's 250 now. When I was in high school, it was 50. Now it's 250. So, you know, I felt like that match means a lot to a lot of people, so I would definitely say that is my favorite match. Again, biased because I was there.
That's really, really cool. What about your favorite pay-per-view card, such as Double or Nothing 2019?
I could tell you mine is not Double or Nothing 2019. Ooh.
Oh, actually, before you do that, why is there hate with Double or Nothing 2019?
There isn't. You just talked about Double or Nothing 2019 a little too much, and I'm like, okay, maybe not that one. If I had to pick one though, I won't even say AEW. WrestleMania 35.
Why does that one speak to you as a fan?
The last one night Mania. It was my first Mania I went to, and all the right people won. I mean, Kofi Mania, Rollins won. We had the first women's main event, so WrestleMania 35 is my favorite pay-per-view card.
Thoughts on getting out of the stadium after the show?
I did not have a problem. I got in my car and my dad drove. We did not have an issue. Everybody else did. We did not.
That's the legacy of that show. I think the legacy of that show is just part. I believe it was Brian Zane that said this, but if it wasn't, no hate. Like I believe it was like we should call this car park mania or something along them lines, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I didn't have an issue. Everyone else did, not me.
No, it was Subway Mania because the show went so late that all the subways had been cancelled. I believe not cancelled, but the last one of the night had gone.
And it was raining. Not me. I got home on time.
That's really, really cool. What about your favorite wrestler's entrance theme?
So it's Adam Cole, probably number one. Both his NXT, his Ring of Honor, and I don't think Adam Cole's ever had a bad entrance song. His AEW one's good. His WWE one was good. He was one of the few that had a good WWE one. His Ring of Honor one was really good. So I would say Adam Cole is probably like top number one. Sasha Banks's WWE theme song was like my hype up song for track meets. Hers and Bailey's. So I'd put that one up there as well. But all three of those I would say favorite.
Thoughts on her AEW theme? Because I know it can be quite controversial.
Cringy.
Okay.
100% cringy. I don't understand. Like her New Japan song was good. Like why? Why?
Fair enough. What about your favorite tag team?
There's so many good ones. Since my agency reps them, I will say FTR.
It's really, really cool. And then finally, Kim, the biggest generic question in my opinion. Who is your favorite overall wrestler?
Seth Rollins.
Why does he speak to you as a fan?
When I was in high school, I related to him a lot. I felt like in the Shield, like you looked at like you know, you looked at Roman Reigns as kind of like the powerhouse. You looked at Dean Ambrose as kind of like the unhinged one, but Rollins was always kind of like that afterthought, dark horse type character. And I felt like that related to me a lot, especially when I was doing track. And to see he was the one that broke out and like all the success, I feel like, you know, that's kind of my story. I broke out from track and here we are all these years later. Seth had helped me a lot through my depression and anxiety in high school, and I owe that to him. It's why I've always kind of said if I got to work with Seth on the convention scene, I'd retire the next day because nothing could ever get better than that. But Roland, 100%. Someone who you could stick a title on him at any point, carry a pay-per-view, carry the company, and you'll never get a bad match out of him. And I'm kind of upset he's injured right now, and I want him back on my TV, but Seth Rollins, 100%.
That's really, really cool. And then as we wrap this up, the question I end this show on is, I believe, as YouTubers, podcasters, people that go to conventions, or even just people with social media, we're all sort of going to live forever in some sort of very weird way. So what is one content or convention in your case that you're like, I would like to be remembered for that? And then what is one that you're like, yuck, please forget about?
Definitely my legacy for WrestleCon in Philly for the media stuff. I feel like that's something that I'm like, that's what I want like people to know me for. I feel like that's why a lot of like top media people figured out who I was because they're like, oh, that's the kid who did that. Got it. So that's something I definitely want to be remembered for. My Adam and Britt interview, biased because it was Britt. Definitely another thing I want to be remembered for because that was a really cool interview because we did the All Access preview. Love that. I don't think I don't think there's like a con that I'm like, yeah, like you don't need to remember for that. I didn't work that. I feel like I don't say that cons are bad. I say that you know, I've developed over time. I've matured over time. I'm not the same fan or same person that worked these shows 2, 3 years ago. I'm looked at in such a, which is so weird. I'm looked at as kind of like a staple now that like if certain talent gets announced, you know I'm gonna be there. If there's a wrestling show on the Northeast, you know I'm gonna be there. So I like being looked at as that too, is kind of like the staple of the wrestling convention scene, the face of the wrestling convention scene, which is why I even tweeted that if there was a PWI list for people on the wrestling convention scene, if you had to pick a number one for 2024, it would be me.
That's a beautiful way to end this, if I'm honest. But as we do, please promote yourself. Where can the good people find you, your work, etc.?
You can find me on Twitter at Kimmy_Sokol. You can find me on Instagram at Kimmy.Sokol. That's SOKOL. Don't follow any of the people that are trying to make fake Instagrams for me. That's happened over the past couple weeks, and my best friends are like, my best friend is so famous. We have people making fake accounts for her. And I'm like, yeah, just please report the accounts. Stop making this such a big deal that it doesn't have to be. You can tune into my Ring of Honor weekly reviews written on PW Insider. You can tune into OLE Establishment on YouTube or Twitch at 10:15 Eastern every single Thursday night. We review Ring of Honor and we cry and complain. We call the show Honor Ramble because we try to talk about other things that are not just Ring of Honor because also we're going to be heartbroken and cry. You can see a lot of my other written work on the Pop Break. I do predictions over there. I do reviews, or if my brain decides to work, any creative stuff I come up with, or convention wise, I don't know where I'd be in. The only con I have confirmed for 2025 is WrestleCon Vegas. I can't think that far out, but
Sorry.
that listen, come to Vegas. I'll be at WrestleCon in some sort of capacity, and I will be doing all of the things you could do once you're legal in Las Vegas.
That's really, really cool. But if you guys like this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. It's Tom Talks Irish on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter or at Tom Talks Irish, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye now.
Thanks for watching this Tom Talks Rubbish conversation. Before you go, please make sure you leave a like on the video, share it around, and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish on YouTube, as well as follow Tom Talks Rubbish on Twitter/X.